Matt, you and I've talked about this mentoring over the past year, how faculty are like, I don't know how to do it. It sounds big and scary. What words should I use? This is the kind of practical thing that you can give them that they can understand and is going to help lead them through that process. Because remember, what we want to say to faculty is please leverage your relationships. Students will talk to you about what's wrong, but you don't have to be an expert in how to help them. You just have to be able to have that initial conversation so that then you can say, I'm going to take you to Matt and he's going to help you with all of these bigger issues. Happy Tuesday, or whatever day you're joining us. I'm Rachel Phillips-Buck, VP for Student Success, joined today by Matt Boisvert, our president at Ferris Resources.
Hello.
Hello.
We have our Christmas colors on today.
I know, and we didn't even plan that. This is our year in review of Cap and Gown. So I think we're in episode 61. We're going to talk about what we've talked about over the last year and kind of highlight some of our favorite episodes and do some State of the Union. But you guys, I know you are so busy. So thank you for taking time to listen to Cap and Gown whenever you're doing that. Also, Matt, there's a bunch of strange things going on. So I am not feeling well. I'm like kind of, and my nose is running, my throat is a little bit sore, but also for the last 2 days, I've been dealing with the weirdest thing. Are you ready? Okay, I'm going to tell everyone about this so that if they've had this weird experience, they can be like, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, it's weird.
Okay, so on Sunday, I was driving home with my daughter and my right eye lost vision. I could not see out of my right eye. So and I was like, this is really weird.
So when you say that, was it blurry or like dark?
No, it was dark. It was like I felt like I'd been staring at the sun and I had like a part of my eye that couldn't see. And so then I came home and I was like, this seems bad. I cannot see out of my eye. And then after a while, I started seeing like light flashes on the side. And so I went to the doctor on Monday and they've been doing a bunch of tests. And there's a thing, you guys, called, what is it? Optical migraines.
Yeah.
It's like a headache, a migraine headache, except instead of causing pain in your head, it just makes you go blind in one eye for just a minute. It's like it lasts 15 minutes. How is this a thing that everyone's like, the doctor's like, yeah, you just have to deal with it. I mean, you know, there's nothing, it's not painful. It's just that happens sometimes. Isn't that crazy town?
As long as it comes back, right?
Yeah, it doesn't take very long. It's just a very strange experience. So once you know it's not going to kill you, then you just live through it. But it's weird. So I'm not my best self today. In fact, I don't know if you guys can see if you've joined us from being at the doctor, my pupils are like gigantic. I'm not on drugs. They've dilated them. It's okay. All right, let's plunge into our State of the Union. Actually, we have quite a few really interesting articles today. Oh, wait, before we do State of the Union, I'm supposed to tell you, first of all, we're going to take the winter break off. We're coming back January 10th. So our next episode is going to be January 10th. But you guys, if you are clients of ours, you should join us for our spotlight sessions that start around there. Rachel Elam can chat you in. That's just a focus time every week for you to be able to come and join us and talk about different best practices with other clients. So we'd love for you to do that. And I made the big announcement last week that we are adding texting to our platform. So if you are interested in adding that, please let me know because we're very excited about it. I think it's going to change everyone's lives.
It's beautiful too. I mean,
yeah. But here's a tidbit about that I think is really interesting. We were just talking to a bunch of schools that were saying that students were not reading their emails. And you and I have said before, in our system, you can see that students are opening your emails. They're just not doing what you ask them.
Right.
And in that group of schools, I said, you guys, you have to email like it's a text. So think of it like a text and use that short language, and then they will respond to it. Don't put in paragraphs and links and blah, 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 right? So there's your tidbit on how to use texting well. Okay, bear with me, you guys. So the first article that I want to call your attention to is called Inside and Out Facilities Matter. This is a student voice survey, which, you know, Inside Higher Ed does often. This is just about how different groups of students value the external look and resources of a school. And so one thing that I thought was really interesting is Black students are the most likely racial group to say facilities factored a great deal into their decision to roll at a campus. So 32% of them, compared to 21% for the full sample. So that's a really interesting thing. You and I were saying we would love to get the data to dig into that a little bit more to understand what that's about. But here's what I thought was most interesting about this article. They have a list of the things that students, the facilities that attracted students to institutions. So the very first thing that students listed was the library. The second thing was the gym, then dining, labs, and dorms. And here's what I find fascinating. They do not talk about any academic classroom in that ranking.
Yeah.
So if you think back to the pandemic, where we were trying to give our students what they were missing because we sent them home, what we did in online learning is we replicated the classroom experience, not well, but we were trying to replicate that, right?
Yeah.
But what students are saying is the library, the gym, the dining, the labs, and the dorms are the pieces that are most important to us as we think about facilities. So I think there's some really good kernels in there of how students are perceiving the value of their institution.
So like we talked about last week, this fits in with physical evidence or tangibles. Like these are the things. It's why campuses, invest a lot of money in their campus center and now ResLife residential halls. Tom Gavick from Credo is a huge space and place guy, really passionate about that. And it's really interesting that their focus on improving spaces and places on a campus is what led them to moving the needle and all the work that they do for improving student success. So it's a big topic. And
well, one of the interesting things that came out of this article was that students were saying, we spend a small amount of time in our classrooms. We spend most of our time in these other places.
Yeah.
But also in brochures, we are seeing like the engineering lab featured in the brochures. And then we're going to, like when you and I went to school, I was in Chambers, which was 100 years old. The floor creaked, it had like brown gross carpet. So the expectation of, oh, engineering labs, and then I go to my psychology classes and it's terrible, right? So pretty interesting.
Related to that, Rachel, there's this whole thing that I just, now, I have my son as a freshman in college, and there's this whole thing about parents creating groups for his class and talking to each other about their kids' experiences and, what's going on in the cafeteria, different issues with res halls. And it's like, my parents had no clue what was going on.
Oh, please. I just saw that actually, where a mom was talking about whether or not she should get her daughter into this apartment complex or this apartment complex. And then all of the parents are like, that place is terrible. This is interesting, Matt. One of the moms was like, the only way I can get anything fixed in my son's room is to email this manager of the apartment complex. I'm like, my mom had no idea the state of the apartments I was living in.
It's a little different.
She wasn't like, yeah, let me fix the faucet for you. I'll take care of that. No way. So pretty interesting.
Very.
You and I have seen a new role, a relatively new role about parent liaison, right? That's trying to manage all of that and think about it in terms of alumni and those conversations, like at least being in the space where parents are having those conversations.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting. Okay. Next one I want to talk to you about is high scoring students applying to selective colleges drive up the applications.
Yeah, this is fascinating.
So this is coming out of some research in the Common App. The average applicant submitted 6.22 applications in the 2021-2022 admission cycle. That has climbed steadily over the years from 4.63 in 2013 to 2014. So that's really interesting that, first of all, just in general, people are submitting more applications, right?
Right.
the number of students applying to more than 10 colleges shot up from 8% to 17% over that same time period. So you have students who are now doing more and more applications. Only in 2013, 2014, only 0.4% of applicants applied to 20 institutions, which is where the Common App capped it. So they're like, you can't apply for more. So they applied for the maximum number. By 2021-22, it was up to 1.8% of students. And of course, these students tend to submit very high ACT and SAT scores. They are 2.5 times more likely to attend a private high school. So it's just fascinating. It's just a different pool of students. And when you and I were talking about this earlier, you were talking about just guidance counselors.
Yeah. So the role of a guidance counselor today, especially in private institutions, just encouraging students to apply as many places as they can, try and get as much kind of competitive analysis on the financials. And then you see these students then putting that pressure on all the financial packages that schools need to put out. So enrollment management has definitely changed with Common App and just the overall approach of just send out as many applications, have some long shot schools, and then some backup plans. I don't know. Yeah, that's changed a lot since you.
Well, I mean, a really big piece of that too is the waiving of the application fee. So you and I were just talking to a student who was like, I didn't want to go to the school, but it was a free application. My mom was like, please do it. So she applied, got accepted, went and did a visit and was like, oh, I love it here. But she was never considering going to that school.
I think that what you just said, though, on the enrollment side of then did a visit. So when enrollment is looking at such a higher volume of applicants, really need to focus on converting them into campus visits so that they see all those things that you were talking about in the first article.
The value. Right? Yeah, for sure. Okay. Another article coming out of the Chronicle. I'm kind of getting tired of these articles because I feel like at this point, we all know what we should be doing. It's just that people are not doing it. So this is called How to Support Your Staff Beyond the Pandemic.
Yeah.
As we're talking about a year in review, like I feel like we've highlighted, I was thinking about when we do our year in review, all of the conversations I've had with Sherry Woosley about the value of higher education, how you support your staff. This basically is like, you need to highlight the value of working on a college campus. You need to allow staff to engage in deep work. You need to create opportunities for staff to work beyond their unit and contribute to the broader campus. Make sure you're communicating directly and clearly. Let the ethic of care guide how you communicate with your staff and model self-care as a leader. I think we've covered all of that stuff this year. Yeah. It's just a question about how in practice you actually are going to do that for your staff and your colleagues, right? One thing I have to tell you I thought was really funny in this article is it says, model self-care as a leader, systematically integrate self-care into office practices. For example, dedicate a few hours a week, a day, or a month to self-care. Yeah, that's a really big swing.
Yeah.
Like to dedicate a few hours a day to self-care. That would be super helpful. Okay.
I think the whole point is like whatever your capacity is right now, to really carve out time. So if you said, for every day this week, I'm just going to set aside 20 minutes and carve that time out. That would be a great start.
Maybe not this week because it's a really busy week, but next week might be okay. That's what happens,
though. That's what happens. So.
You and I were talking. Yeah, we were talking about what kind of action items do we want to have coming out of this year in review. And I was like, can we just not have action items this time? Can we just, the action item is rest, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Article coming out of The Hill. This is called Fully Online College Courses Linked with Worse Student Mental Health. I don't think anyone's surprised about this. but it's really good to have a study to be able to point to. College students who attended fully online classes reported more psychological distress than their peers who attended classes in the hybrid format. Regardless of their current anxiety or depressive disorders, COVID-19 concerns, and time spent socializing with friends. So this is apart from all of those, controlled for all of those. Students who were in those fully online classes just had more distress. Not surprising, you guys, we've been talking about this for the entire year. Through the 2021 school year, more than 60% of college students met the criteria for at least one mental health problem, according to the American Psychological Association. So that's 2021. That's, you know, we're not taking into account the toll of years of COVID. That's just looking at that time period.
You said 60. I thought you said 6, but it's 60%. Crazy.
Compared with before the pandemic, the prevalence of depressive symptoms among U.S. adults aged 18 to 39 years old more than quadrupled by April of 2020. One conclusion that comes out of here, so this is not news. I think we've been saying for a long time, this was already happening. The pandemic exacerbated it. There's a lot of things that we have to do differently. Some students reported feeling distracted or procrastinating in online learning environments and may have had decreased motivation to connect with professors in the absence of face-to-face interactions. So I pulled that out of the article because I was just thinking, how often when I am connecting deeply with a person, I don't want to start. Like, I don't want to go to the party. I don't want to go to the thing. I don't want to go to the dinner. I don't want to do that stuff. And then when I am disciplined and I choose to do it, it's always a really great thing. I enjoy myself. I come out of it like, I'm so happy I did that. That was really good. I'm just thinking about these students where if you don't have to talk to anybody, it is a much easier choice to just say, I'm just going to stay at home in my pajamas and like watch these videos and try to be successful here, right? So that is a really difficult position for students to be in.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, well, that sounds like you sound like an introvert right there.
Yeah.
Not wanting to go out, but it really, there's just, I'm curious about for fully online programs moving forward, knowing this, there has to be a plan then for how do we just on the side provide support, you know, our friends at Timely MD, if that's a possibility, or just being like that ought to be baked in, because also bake in as much as you can collisions, really intentional collisions for your online students, right?
I must be hungry because I thought you said bacon. I was like, what? What about bacon? Bacon. Yes, bacon. Okay. 2 more for you. These are I saved my last 2 for my favorites. Did you read this article in Higher Ed Dive about an ambitious plan to re-enroll California stopped-out students? So Matt, this reminds me of UTEP, University of Texas. Was it El Paso? UTSA. Years ago, they did a dive to say who are students who are close to graduating but didn't because they had a hold on their transcript or their ability to register, right? Well, 4 million working age Californians have completed some college credit but left before they could get a degree. So these 30 different colleges are working together to re-enroll these students. And they have all of these partners. There's like the Strata Education Network, the ECMC Foundation are funding it. You know, Inside Track is doing support of these students. So it's all of these different people in California that are like, hey, we can provide this part in this initiative. What's really amazing about it is they're prioritizing students who have earned enough credit that they're within a year of completing their degree, first of all. Second, they're looking at students who have stopped out in just the last 2 years, because they're like, hey, we think if we can get you back your life circumstances maybe haven't changed enough that that's not going to be a good direction for you. The other thing that I think is really interesting is that this announcement says this is an institution agnostic initiative, which means we are not focused on re-enrolling students where they stopped out. We just want them to go back to school. So they're like, if the student has moved or their circumstances are different or whatever, we just want them to get back in school so that they can graduate. They have data showing that when students do return to college, 62% of them end up attending a different institution than the one they left. So they're like, we can't make that part of the initiative that you're going to get back your students. We just want them to get back and to be able to graduate. So I love that idea of just, let's find a group of students like we do for our impact cohort and just do everything we can to help them to be successful, right, in their achievement of that degree. So I love that.
Yeah, it's great. So all of those schools are working together. I was just thinking, how do you find those 4 million students who didn't complete and they're that close?
Yeah.
But if they're all working together and saying, well, this is who came in, but is no longer here, let's all put together a statewide campaign.
Yeah, it's going to be really awesome. Okay. And then the last thing I have for you guys, please, I am going to make this part of when we do implementation with campuses, we are going to make this a new part of the resources that I give them. You guys are familiar with the JED Foundation, which is all about, it's a nonprofit that protects emotional health and prevents suicide of nation's teens and young adults. So you and I have talked to them before. They do amazing work. Yeah. Really appreciate their commitment to that work for students. But they have just published a faculty guide to supporting student mental health. Thank you, guys. I feel like schools have been begging for this. I feel like one of the biggest conversations we have is how do we get faculty trained up so that they can engage with our students? So often faculty, they're just out like a fish out of water. They don't know what they should be saying or what they should be doing or how they should be acting or the questions they should ask. This is the best, simple. It is super straightforward and really practical. So it starts with faculty on the front lines. Nearly 80% of higher education faculty reported having dealt with student mental health issues over the past 12 months. So faculty are like, we are seeing this in our classes. We don't feel well equipped. Nationally, 35% of students said they would talk to a faculty member if they had a mental health issue affecting their academic performance. Academic pressure is associated with many common mental health symptoms, including anxiety, depression, substance abuse. So the first page of this report is just, this is why this should be important to you. Okay. Yeah. The next page is about how to support mental health in the classroom. Talk about it. At the beginning of the semester, say these words. Know your campus resources. You should have a list of every place you can refer your students. Put resources in the syllabus. Thank you, Jed. Yes, put resources in the syllabus. Encourage self-care, make thoughtful deadlines, allow mental health absences. So under each of those bullet points, they're like, this is what that actually means. Here's how you're going to do it.
Great.
Next page, how to recognize a student who is struggling. This is what it looks like. Missed assignments, repeated absences, decline in academic performance, excessive fatigue. They just go through the list of like, you think it's an academic issue. These are symptoms of a struggling student. And then they say how to reach out to a struggling student. Find a way to speak privately with them. Tell them what you see that's making you concerned. Bullet point it out. Here's what you do. Here's what you don't do. Right? Don't promise confidentiality. Don't leave the student alone if you feel like they're an immediate risk. Really practical. The next page is about how to start a conversation. So ways to approach a struggling student. Quote, I noticed you missed class a few times. What's going on for you? This page, I think faculty, it's going to be like dog-eared. They're going to just have it on their desk because they don't have the words to be able to do these things. Ways to respond when a student shares struggles with you. Ways to talk with a student who needs immediate help. And then the last part of this is all of the resources for supporting students nationally. So if you need help or you want to have a conversation, here are all of the different places you go. I'm so happy with them. This is going to be an awesome resource. Yeah. So you guys, if you are a school where we have had a conversation about faculty buy-in, how do you tell them that their role is important? That Matt, you and I've talked about this mentoring over the past year, how faculty are like, I don't know how to do it. It sounds big and scary. What words should I use? This is the kind of practical thing that you can give them that they can understand and is going to help lead them through that process. Because remember, what we want to say to faculty is please leverage your relationships. Students will talk to you about what's wrong, but you don't have to be an expert in how to help them. You just have to be able to have that initial conversation so that then you can say, I'm going to take you to Matt and he's going to help you with all of these bigger issues, right? So
Good.
Thrilled about that one. That is the State of Union.
Right.
Not too shabby. Okay, so Matt, I told you we were going to have a short one today because I just want to do a year in review. We were laughing because we have a little bit of a problem with the year versus the academic year, right? So the year 2022, we're going to start back in January, and I'm just going to do a really brief overview of episodes that if you missed them, you should go back and watch, or if you want to find something particular, I'm going to point you to where you can find it. But we are going to continue on. We'll take our Christmas break, but then we'll come back in the spring with all of our rhythm of the academic year for the spring, and then we take the summer off. So this is episode 61, but it might be season 2, but it might be season 3. We got to get all that worked out. We haven't done this forever, so we're trying to work it out.
Rookies.
We're rookies. But do you remember the theme of 2022?
I do. So we went from Kintsugi the year before, and then this year we wanted to really emphasize investing in and not just surviving, but thriving and focusing on change that will put you in that place.
Yeah. So the theme for the year was change. And you and I talked about that in our first couple of episodes this year. I like what you said about, we have an episode about stop surviving and start thriving. And I have to be honest, I don't think we're there yet. I don't think 22 moved us into thriving yet, but I do think it moved us out of just surviving and just trying to keep our head above water and trying to figure out what was going on, and like all of that mental load that we talked about last year about, I have never done this stuff before, right? And has moved us closer to the next normal of, we're back with our students. We understand the rhythm of the academic year, but things are different.
And I just want to say, as we go through this, what's nice, so if you are listening, you can go back to Anchor, or you can go to YouTube. And if you missed it, you can go back and listen to these. But that was a really good kickoff, that focus on so laying that foundation for change and starting off the year that way.
I think a lot of people are listening to us on their whatever their podcast channel is. So that's always really nice. When I'm cooking dinner, I just always have my podcast on. So however you're listening to us, you can go back and look at any of these. The next thing that I want to highlight, we have a series that I did with Dr. Sherry Woosley, exactly as I was just talking about, all of the ways that we are trying to have good mental health, that we are trying to value what's happening in higher education. So we have episode 40, identifying and addressing shock factors, where she and I talked about there are career shock factors that happen in your career. The pandemic would be one of those. Where you're just like, where am I and what am I doing? And they're very similar to the things that our students were experiencing as well. So that's the first of that series with her. The next one is creating safe environments for learning and growth. And that is really about how you can create a culture where we want to be together and we want to learn together. And so she has some great insight to offer in that one. I think that's episode 45. 48, she came back and we talked about breaking the culture code, which you and I talked about quite a bit, but she started us off there with all of the elements that come out of that book, which I'll talk more about in just a minute. And then the last one, which I think is our second highest listened to episode, which is about her survey that she did with student affairs professionals. Yeah. And just going through all of the data. Then that I told you that got stuck, that got picked up by Inside Higher Ed. But those 4 episodes, 40, 45, 48, and 57 are a great digest on what is happening in higher education with professionals as we're trying to be great resources for our students, but also struggling with a lot of things coming out of a couple of really difficult years.
She's great.
I love Sherry so much. She is a great professional. She has such a great brain, but also she's a great friend. Like, she just is so kind and generous and up for anything and fun. So
And we knew that the first day we met her. When we met her in person, it was like, wow, this is the kind of person we'd like to hang out with.
Want to spend time with, for sure. So you can look forward to a lot more of her, but those are great ones to go back and listen to. And then you remember that we started our Ferris Resources employee interviews. So we had done Shauna before. I think Braden, who is our director of operations, but came from the office of the registrar. I think that's our #1 viewed episode for the past year. And the reason I think that that's true is because when you have a registrar and somebody who understands all of that stuff, talking about how they can be innovative and forward thinking and try new things and be involved in all of these things, everyone's like, yes, please, I would like to hear, I would like to hear how that role can evolve. So I love that.
That was a great one to forward on to your manager, right? Like, hey, listen to this. It's great.
Yeah. And then we also had Rachel Elam on, and she and I talked a lot about things like your passion and how you find your job and your vocation and all of those kind of things. So that was, we had a couple in there, 42 and 43, where we were talking about employees. We will continue that in the coming year because we work with a lot of great people that I want you to meet. But those were really fun. And then we really
don't you think that conversation with Rachel Elam really led us to the, hey, we need to put her in this new role, kind of being on
to identify her strength. Yeah, for sure. And then you guys, we have 2 books that we covered this year. The first one is The Culture Code. You guys will remember coming out of this, belonging cues, collisions, all of those elements of how we shift. I'm telling you, this was a revelation for me this year, shifting from danger brain to connected brain, shifting from, I don't know if I belong here. Who are these people? Is it safe? Do I need to be on guard? What am I going to do? To, I do belong here. These are my people. And that in the coming year, you and I are going to talk about how you look around at other students and make sense of that, right? How the other students that you're talking to are sending you cues. You belong here. This is the right place. No, it's not just about how our staff and our faculty are doing that, but I love that shift.
I wonder if Kirk knows how, when Kirk made that recommendation for that book, he knew it was a good book, but how we could just take that and provide these little elements of value to our listeners and clients.
Well, and I should also say, like, that is a language that we have adopted and that we've started using, but, you know, we have started to craft, Savannah Glassman is working on crafting sort of out of the box engagement, like send this email and use this language and do this thing. And here's what you need to accomplish. And so all of that is based on that culture code, using that language and making sure that we're sending those belonging cues. So it is a really, really powerful book. I think it's my favorite book of the year. And then the other book that we spent a lot of time with was Relationship Rich Education, which I really highly recommend. You guys remember that that is about how you incentivize your campus culture to support good relationships. So that's where we got this idea of allowing faculty to have relationships, making sure that we're counting that as valuable, using the right language there. One of my favorite things out of that book was like, write down, every freshman write down the person who would celebrate you on campus, and then have a dinner for all of those people and have the provost and the, you know, VP for student success say, thank you guys so much, you're doing a great job. It's just full of ways to make sure that you're incentivizing those. And I love the, don't be afraid of mentorship. It doesn't have to be forever. It just has to be the student in front of you right now. If they feel seen, you've done a great job there. So that was an awesome book coming out. And then Matt, you and I have spent the last couple of weeks talking about how to revamp student conduct. So with our Epic Journey, that powerful idea that there's a way back for you, that you can grow even when you've made a mistake, and we want you to be part of our community. And then we talked about motivational interviewing, which is straight counseling. And then last week we talked about ServQual, which is straight services, right? And how you're going to measure what you're doing and what you're providing for students. Yeah. So such good content this year, thanks to these books, of really practical ways of thinking about how we can engage our students.
Well, and you also had 2 sessions with, or a podcast with Anthony Melchiori, and that was, when I look back at those, it was nice to have him just want to come back on and talk about leading. So leading for creativity, leading with excellence. So I always love when he's able to join us, and just watching that conversation that you all have.
Yeah, I think last time he joined us was on his birthday. So that's he must like us pretty well for him to spend part of his birthday with us. So those are always fun. Rachel Elam and I are putting together the agenda for next semester. So we're going to have a lot more guests for you guys. I have a long list of things that I want for us to talk about, and I have a stack of books that I will be making my way through over the Christmas break to be able to come back and have more good conversation. But if you guys have recommendations, or if you're like, hey, here's a topic we really would love to cover, we would love to hear about that from you.
I think that's really, yeah. So like Kirk, if you've read a great book, just email Rachel@ferrisresources.com and subject great book.
Yeah, it's great. All right, friends, we want to give you some found time today. So thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to being back with you in January. Hope you have a lot of rest and health and peace over the coming weeks. Thank you so much for the good work you do and for allowing us to serve you and be partners to you. So have a great holiday season.